Got a call about Yukon John. He's stuck 10 miles offshore. Vern went out, tried to pick him up, and Yukon waved him off.
Vern came out, said, jump on. I like, what? I said, I can't leave my boat yet. I said, ain't no way.
A gold diver almost died underwater while searching for treasure, but just hours later, Shawn hit the jackpot with $300,000. This wasn't a movie or a wild story, it really happened out in the freezing, dangerous sea. Why would someone risk everything for gold and pretend like everything was under control? Tune in to see what happened next, because it made the Coast Guard to file a report on all the miners. Diving into danger and dollars. Now let's be real, if you're sitting on a dredge in the middle of angry waves, maybe don't act like Superman. John was already pushing it, stuck out there longer than any sane person would be, and when his boat started looking like it was about to go under, it became clear he was not going to get himself out of this. Enter Shawn Pomerenke and his crew, guys who don't really do drama but somehow end up in the middle of it every single time. Before we dive deeper, just know, what happened next on those icy waters was far more intense than anyone expected, and this won't be the only moment that leaves you speechless. This wasn't just some lazy paddle across a lake, these were massive waves, like 10-footers slapping hard, throwing boats around like toys. But Shawn wasn't going to sit back while some dude turned into fish food. He grabbed his team, Joe and Chris, and hit the water. No fuss, just full throttle into a risky mess because apparently, when you're out here, you're all part of the same messed up family. They had to search through all that mess to find John. For what felt like forever, it was nothing but waves, wind, and guessing where he might be. And then boom, there he was, clinging to whatever he could, looking more like a ghost than a diver. The kind of look that says, I really thought I was going to die out here. Now comes the part no one wants to talk about. Getting close to someone else's boat in water like that? Dumb, straight up dangerous. One wrong move and both boats are wrecked. People tangled in ropes, steel hitting steel. It's the stuff that ends careers or lives. So what do? They throw in a dinghy, a little inflatable lifeboat. Not exactly the tool you want to bet your life on, but hey, it's better than nothing. John had to jump into the water and climb in. You know, that had to feel like the longest swim of his life. But he did it. They pulled him in, cold, tired, and probably questioning every decision he made that day. And just like that, he was back on a boat that wouldn't leave him drifting into the grave. Meanwhile, while all this life-saving stuff was going down, Shawn still had gold to think about. Let that sink in. The man saved a life and still had the drive to cash in. Back on land, they poured out the gold from their dredging haul. 167 ounces. Do the math, and that's over $300,000. Think about it. A guy nearly died. Another guy made a fortune. Same day, same ocean. Two different outcomes. But here's the thing. None of this is rare in their world. These divers roll the dice every single time they go out. It's not just about getting rich, it's about surviving long enough to enjoy what you find. That water doesn't care how tough you are. Doesn't care if you think you're the best. It'll slap you down just to remind you who's in charge. And John got that reminder. He was lucky. Next time, maybe not so much. You'd think maybe the lesson here is to play it safer, read the weather, know when to fold. But nah, most of these guys are wired the same way. They believe if they don't push the limits, they'll never strike it big. That mindset's built into them like rust on metal. It never really goes away. Meanwhile, Shawn's just stacking gold, calm as ever, because while one boat was nearly sinking, his was still pulling treasure from the deep. That 300 grand wasn't some fluke. It was grit, timing, and just a little bit of that stubbornness they all carry around. Sure, he could have played it safe, waited out the storm, gone back later, but that's not how you win out here. But while some were lucky to make it back alive, the sea had other plans for the ones who stayed a little longer. He nearly died while the other struck gold. The ocean doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're brave, tired, lucky, or careful. It doesn't hand out second chances or explain why it gives one person a win and nearly takes another away. One moment, everything feels right. The sun is shining, the water is calm, and it feels like maybe today will be the day something amazing happens. Then, just like that, the sky darkens, the wind shifts, and the same water that looked peaceful now wants to pull you under. That's how fast things change out there. That's why this story stays with you. Imagine two men, same boat, same waves, same exact day. One of them nearly loses his life in the water. He could have been gone forever, no goodbye, no warning. The other guy? He finds something shiny in the sand, pops open a jar filled with gold, and grins like he just won the biggest prize in the world. One man is coughing up salt water, the other is holding history in his hands, and somehow they're both still part of the same team. Now these guys, don't call them heroes, but they're not the bad guys either. They're not in this for attention. They're not chasing TV shows or fame. They don't care if anyone knows their names. What they are is stuck in a world where danger and reward live side by side. They do this work because they have to, because sitting still doesn't make sense to them. They wouldn't know how to live a regular life even if someone offered it to them. When your job is pulling treasure out of the sea, your days aren't calm. They're wild, they're freezing, and sometimes they're barely survivable. You don't get days where everything goes right. You get days where something almost goes terribly wrong, and then you're just grateful to be alive. John, the guy who almost didn't make it, might think twice before heading out alone again. Or maybe not, because the strange thing about almost dying is that it slips away fast once you're safe and warm. Once your feet are back on dry land and you're breathing air that doesn't taste like salt, you tell yourself it wasn't that bad. You laugh it off, even if you were shaking minutes before. You start to forget, even if your hands still feel numb. And while John was wrapping himself in a towel, trying to feel normal again, Shawn was already thinking ahead. He was counting small chunks of gold, making plans, running numbers, wondering where to dig next. That's how it goes. No big celebration, no crowd clapping, no one throws their arms around you. It's just another day. One man barely makes it out. One man strikes gold. Both go home. And the ocean stays quiet. It watches. It waits. Even with lives hanging by a thread, the real test was still ahead, seeing who could walk away with gold and who would be left empty-handed. 10 dives that nearly broke them. Forget what the glossy promos say. Bearing sea gold isn't some wild adventure where folks always strike it rich. It's a cold, muddy, back-breaking mess where a few stubborn, half-frozen people drag gold from the ocean floor. And while the show tries to paint each haul as a fairy tale win, the reality is much more grimy and unpredictable. But yeah, every now and then someone pulls up something big enough to make you blink twice. Not because they struck it lucky, but because they somehow didn't drown or lose their gear in the chaos. Take Shawn Pomerenke, for example. They call him Mr. Gold. But let's be honest, it's not because he walks around handing out nuggets, it's because he scraped together 117 ounces of gold, which came out to over $230,000. Sounds great until you remember how much he probably spent fixing his dredge and keeping everything running while freezing his hands off in the Bering Sea. Then there was Chris McCulley. He and his crew dove for almost 3 hours. That's 3 hours underwater in bone-cold dark water trying to suck up mud with a glorified vacuum. In the end, they walked away with 439 grams worth more than $32,000. Not bad, sure. But those are long, dangerous hours for what could have easily ended with nothing but frostbite. Emily Riedel is another one who doesn't get nearly enough credit. She pulled out 92 ounces of gold as the captain of the Eroica. That's a lot, but it didn't just fall in her lap. She deals with engine failures, team drama, and the usual insanity that comes with chasing gold underwater. People forget how much pressure sits on the captain's shoulders when something breaks miles from shore. Chris Kelly, meanwhile, had his small victory when his crew grabbed 15 ounces early in the season. Sounds small next to the rest, right? But considering how many times his equipment has exploded, sunk, or just refused to start, 15 ounces might as well be a jackpot. It was their first real haul that season, and honestly, a much-needed morale boost. Now, Ken Kerr, that guy had a haul worth $260,000. That's not chump change. But anyone who's seen the show knows Kerr rolls with the big setups. His gear is huge, his crews are big, and the stakes are massive. When his operation pays off, it really pays off. But when it doesn't, the losses are brutal. And yet again, here comes Shawn Pomerenke. This time he hits a hot spot like some magic patch of ocean floor spitting out gold. He walks away with more than $266,000. But let's not forget the dredge he was using almost sank because of a crack in the hull. These wins aren't shiny trophies. They're bruises and duct tape held together by sheer grit. Speaking of grit, Emily Riedel's crew went on a 10-hour dive and came up with another 15 ounces. That's right, 10 straight hours. Breathing through tubes, fighting current, and hoping their equipment doesn't conk out midway. It's hard to describe just how physically and mentally draining that is. Most people wouldn't last 10 minutes. And again, yes again, Shawn Pomerenke shows up with another haul, this one worth around $83,000. At this point, he should probably get a bed named after him on the Christine Rose. He keeps bouncing back no matter what tries to take him down. Ice, hull damage, crew member disasters, he eats it all for breakfast. Chris Kelly also had a clever moment. He found gold, $21,000 worth, by mining out a hole another team had already dug. Smart? Yes. Sneaky? Maybe. But in this game, using what's already there sometimes beats trying to discover some brand new patch. It shows that knowing how to play the system can pay just as much as brute effort. To wrap it up, there's yet another Shawn moment. $150,000 worth of gold. Just another day in the life, right? At least that's what it looks like. But what the show doesn't show much is how many days he comes up empty or worse, broken parts, wasted fuel, and fights with his team. When you zoom out, these top 10 gold finds might sound like a dream, but really they're survival stories. They're warnings with sparkles. Each big number has a lot of failure, danger, and straight-up exhaustion behind it. Every win is hanging by a thread. These people aren't just miners. They're gamblers, stubborn ones clinging to the idea that the next dive might finally be the one that turns it all around. This show isn't about adventure, it's about obsession, about trying to squeeze treasure from a place that does everything it can to keep it hidden. The Bering Sea doesn't care about dreams. It doesn't reward effort fairly. Sometimes you give it everything and walk away with a busted winch and zero gold. Other times you stumble into a payday that makes all the pain feel worth it. But make no mistake, it's luck, strategy, and a whole lot of stubborn that make the difference. With so many risks taken out at sea, it's time to see how one man grew up learning to face those dangers. From Nome to $1 million name? Let's be real, Nome, Alaska isn't exactly the place people dream of moving to. But that's where Shawn Pomerenke came into the world, way back in March of 1975. This isn't just any snowy town, it's where old stories of gold rushes still hang in the air. Growing up here didn't leave Shawn with a lot of choices. Gold was in the dirt, in the water, and in his family. His dad, Steve, was already deep into the gold life, and it didn't take long before Shawn got pulled into it too. By the time he was a teenager, he was working the mines side by side with his dad. School? Sure, he went, but his real classroom was the freezing Bering Sea, not some chalkboard and desks. He picked up how to run heavy machines, how to deal with frozen fingers, and how to keep going even when things looked bad. He wasn't just learning how to find gold, he was learning how to survive. Fast forward a few years, and he and his dad decided to go big. They started Pomerenke Mining, their own operation focused on pulling gold out of the sea. They had a custom dredge called the Christine Rose, a floating beast made to do one thing: suck gold out of places other people couldn't reach. This wasn't some rusty old boat. This was serious gear, and it changed everything for them. Then TV came knocking. In 2012, Discovery Channel launched Bering Sea Gold, and suddenly millions of people were watching him dig in the cold, curse at broken engines, and gamble his savings on big gold hauls. He became known as Mr. Gold. But let's be clear, this guy earned that nickname by pushing harder than anyone else. What made him stand out wasn't just how much gold he found, but how he dealt with the madness of the sea, the drama with his crew, and all the other chaos. Equipment failed. Weather turned deadly. People fought. But he didn't back down. He stayed out there, shoving through the mess, chasing more gold. But this story isn't all glitter and gold. He has had his share of crashes, literally. He's had a few run-ins with the law, mostly from bad decisions behind the wheel. Yeah, those DUI charges didn't help his image. Then there was a serious back injury that knocked him off his feet. Surgery followed. Recovery was rough. For a guy used to lifting pipes and wrestling hoses, being stuck in bed must have been brutal. Still, he came back, and not just limping back, he came back with plans. Big ones, like the Mega Dredge. This thing was supposed to be the future, a gold-sucking monster that would leave Christine Rose in the dust. But building something that size costs more than a few bags of gold. He poured time, money, and energy into it, but eventually even he had to admit it wasn't going to happen. At least not the way he wanted. Money-wise, though, he did fine. Word has it he's sitting on a few million, not just from the gold, but from the show too. Fame brings dollars, and he made it work. But even with the cash, you could see he wasn't just about stacking bills. He kept mining, he kept pushing, and then there's the family side. He has kids, including his son Dylan, who's been popping up on the show. Maybe it's about passing the torch, or maybe it's just about giving the kid a shot. Either way, it looks like the Pomerenke name won't be fading anytime soon. Even with all the stress, injuries, and busted plans, he didn't slow down. He started looking inland, trying to mine places that weren't as risky as the freezing ocean. No boats, no storms, just good old-fashioned dirt. It was a smart move, not just to stay safe, but to keep things going if offshore mining took a hit. Another thing, he started paying more attention to how mining affects nature. The ocean isn't endless, and he seemed to get that. He started talking about keeping things clean, using better methods, and not trashing the marine life while chasing gold. For a guy who made a name slamming into the sea with giant machines, that's a pretty big shift. The gold market isn't a straight line. Prices go up and down like a roller coaster, and anyone in the game has to deal with that. But he didn't just ride the wave. He tried to get ahead of it, planning better, investing smarter, and staying one step ahead of the drop. And you can bet he kept upgrading his tools. Better gear, smarter tech, and new ways to track gold under the water. While some miners were stuck in the past, he was already testing the next big thing. But it wasn't all machines and money. Bering Sea Gold showed the fights, the stress, the hard choices. He wasn't just a boss, he was part of a wild bunch of miners trying to win in a brutal game. Sometimes they worked together, other times they clashed hard. And in the middle of it all was Shawn, trying to lead, survive, and win. Was Yukon John's near death a brave choice or pure madness fueled by greed and pride? Tell us what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.